Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parsha class. My name is Gedalia Meyer. I'm podcasting from Ma'ale Adumim in Israel. As I speak, Israel remains in a coronavirus lockdown that has made much of the population confused and angry, while leaving much of the rest cautiously hopeful. Nobody knows exactly how much longer this lockdown will last, or if they do, they are not letting the rest of us know. Everyone hopes the numbers will go down significantly so that we can get back to our normal lives. But there isn't all that much confidence that it will happen anytime soon. Needless to say, it is frustrating. But like all things in life that are frustrating, this too shall somehow pass. Meanwhile, life does go on, normal or otherwise. Thankfully, we have things in our lives that remind us, however subtly, that there is always a way to begin again. It may be a new year, a birthday, a new job, a new relationship, or just about anything else that we can somehow latch onto that manages to convince us that things will get better. It happens that Judaism is loaded with these things, perhaps because Jewish history is unfortunately loaded with situations that demanded optimism at all costs. There is Rosh Hashanah, there is Yom Kippur, there is Passover. There are weddings and bar mitzvahs and births. Every one of these things is a reminder that things can change for the better and that there is a silver lining surrounding every cloud. There is also, of course, the Parsha. This week is not just any old Parsha, even though no Parsha is really any old Parsha. But this week's Parsha is the epitome of not just any old Parsha. It is the Parsha of Bereshit, where the annual cycle of reading the Torah begins anew. No matter how disconnected a somewhat observant Jew is from the intricacies of the Torah and its true message, they cannot help but be aware and even a bit optimistic about starting the Torah all over again. This is not just another New Year's celebration. This is the Torah. And of course, the story of creation. Bereshit means in the beginning. Everyone knows that, even those who don't know a word of Hebrew or have never looked into the Bible. Somehow that phrase, in the beginning, in whatever language it is translated, has made it into the collective human consciousness as the definitive statement of everything. There has been much discussion among Jewish scholars for the ages as to whether this translation really hits the spot, or if some other variation reveals an inner truth that is missed entirely by in the beginning. But in spite of all that, this translation and interpretation remains the gold standard. Nothing quite answers the ultimate question like the opening sentence of the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. We're going to analyze this sentence in classic Jewish style, going through the words to find out what it really means. First of all, let's deal with the general matter of creation. The word itself, the third word in the Hebrew text, has the connotation of creating something from nothing. The well-known Latin term for this is creation ex nihilo. From the strictly scientific point of view, there is no such thing. How can something come from nothing? This might sound a bit too philosophical for many people's taste, but it is really quite a quite simple matter that concerns us all. It may have nothing to do with the latest Facebook or Instagram posts, but when put in perspective, it seems a good deal more important than those things. How did everything get here? Science, in spite of all its majestic achievements over the past 500 years or so, still has no answer to this very basic question. What they have succeeded in doing is devising a structure for how it would work if it could work. The structure, for better or worse, is called the Big Bang. While the phrase sounds like something a boy in kindergarten came up with, it is really the best thing out there. It simply happened that the entire universe, everything, space, time, matter, energy, all the intricate laws of nature, whether known or unknown, came into being in that one fateful instant. If you think this all sounds a bit like, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, you would not be wrong. It does, and it is. The only differences between the two creation stories is that the biblical one has this thing called God, while the other doesn't, and that the non-biblical version has a vast amount of details concerning the laws of nature and particles and quantum stuff and space-time and all that, while the other one doesn't. Let's examine those differences. Starting with the second difference, it is obvious that the scientific approach has a lot more going for it in terms of the how. It has all those intricate laws, the brilliant theories of relativity and quantum mechanics, weird things like black holes, dark energy, and cosmic expansion or contraction. It has protons, neutrons, Higgs bosons, and photons, to say nothing of electrons. It has four forces that will hopefully one day be merged into one primordial force that explains everything. The Bible, on the other hand, just has the heavens and the earth. It's true that the next couple of verses talk about chaos and emptiness, a spirit hovering over the waters, and God saying, "Let there be light." But this hardly suffices to explain galaxy formation or the origin of the elements. On this difference alone, let us say that science wins out in terms of a more complete explanation. Now let's get to that first difference. God or no God? That is the question. It's really that simple. The God people and the no God people are probably equally positive about their side being absolutely correct and the other side being utterly wrong. There really doesn't seem to be any way of bridging what looks like a completely unbridgeable gap between these two sides. God is a magical fairy tale to the no God people, an old man with a long beard who sits on some throne in the heavens, doling out occasional fire and brimstone. But the Big Bang is not really any more sophisticated than it sounds to the God people. It's just a fancy way of saying we don't know what happened. To imagine some mysterious cosmic firecracker exploding in the middle of nothingness, and then everything from atoms to time emerging from it, seems like the ultimate in making things up out of thin air. Of course, both sides are really misjudging the other side and simplifying things to a ridiculous degree. The Big Bang was not some cartoon explosion. It was an incredibly complex process that involved multiple dimensions and spontaneous random fluctuations on an unimaginably small scale. There is no question that the current model barely skims the surface of a complete picture, but there is also no question that they are onto something that may end up explaining a great deal. On the other side, God is no longer seen as the guy in Michelangelo's painting on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. That may have been the in vogue image of 500 years ago, but it isn't any longer. That image has been replaced by a much more refined and sophisticated image of a, quote, source of existence, or something along those lines. That such a deep and almost unimaginable being should be interested in the fickle lives of human beings and their fickle quirks and moods is a matter of religious belief, but it has no bearing on the basic reality of this being. God is the creator, the one who lit the firecracker. Now that we've clarified the field a bit more and made each side a good deal more believable than the superficial image that first occurred to the other side, we can take stock of things and see if the disagreement between the sides is really so great. The Big Bang is really what happens in the first verse of the Bible from the perspective of science. What the religious people call God, the scientists would rather leave open-ended. From the opposite perspective, God is really the mysterious source of the Big Bang, that single unanswered and unanswerable matter that science could never work out. The God idea, at least when it comes to God's creator role, is nothing more and nothing less than the answer to that question. What made it all happen? The answer is this thing called God. If we could somehow get the two sides to sit in the same room and discuss all this, we might find that a quite remarkable thing has taken place. These two massively divided perspectives on almost everything could practically agree on the most basic and important question of all. Of course, this will probably never happen because the science side will never throw in the towel and admit to the existence of God, while the religious people will never stoop to the level admitting that these atheist scientists might be onto something. This is unfortunate, since great things could come of this union. As none other than Albert Einstein once said, "Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind." As far as the words in that first verse are concerned, it really says all that needs to be said if one is only interested in answering the basic question. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning, the first thing that happened was that God created. God, the source of existence, made from nothing, the heavens and the earth. Everything that those who lived in biblical times could possibly understand and fathom. If one wants to know more about the details about this creation process, and if one wishes to update the list of things that were actually created in that first instance, perhaps one should look into the latest and greatest of astrophysics or something along those lines. The details may not be all that easy to understand without proper training, but they are out there in very manageable forms like documentaries or books or lectures. Of course, there is another route that one could go if they want only a few more details. They could read the rest of this chapter in the Bible. Given that the presentation in the Bible was one that was meant for people living in biblical times and not for people who knew about black holes and space-time curvature, things might seem a bit simplistic. But for those who have no great need to know about those details and are more interested in understanding how people through the ages, from biblical times until today, sought an answer to the most basic question and followed it through as best they could, the rest of this chapter is really not all that bad. What was the first thing God did after creation? After seeing the chaos and the emptiness, the spirit of creation hovered above those mysterious waters and proclaimed, "Let there be light." And there was light. Is there really any better way of saying that the process of creation didn't end with one big explosion of a cosmic firecracker, but continued in many different phases, beginning with the most basic thing of all, light? Light is what we all imagine to be the key to knowledge and understanding. From the loftiest ideas of quantum mechanics to the twinkle of a star on an otherwise dark night, light is there to enable perception, clarity, distinction. It may be scientific, or it may be religious, or it may be something else entirely. But light brings order to a chaotic and empty world. If only we could all appreciate light a bit more. Maybe then we could appreciate this thing that some call God and others call reality. Shabbat shalom.